Every generation of racing produces champions, but once in a lifetime, something arrives that changes what the word champion even means. And 52 years later, we're still measuring everything against him. There's a moment that happens in every great horse's career, usually years after they've retired, sometimes after they're gone, when people stop asking if they were good and start asking where they rank. Against who? Compared to what? With Secretariat, that conversation ended before he ever left the track. He didn't just win the Triple Crown. He didn't just break records. He became the standard, the measuring stick, the horse that every trainer, every owner, every announcer would invoke whenever something special came along. Could he be another Secretariat? That question has been asked about dozens of horsings, and the answer, every single time, has been no. This is the story of why. 15 reasons why one horse, one chestnut colt with a white blaze and an impossible stride, became the benchmark for greatness itself. Number 15. The heart that wouldn't quit, literally. When Secretariat died in 1989, Dr. Thomas Swerchek performed the necropsy at the University of Kentucky. He'd done thousands of these examinations over his career. Thoroughbreds, quarter horses, every kind of equine athlete. He knew what to expect. But when he opened Secretariat's chest cavity, he stopped. The heart was massive, twice the size of an average thoroughbred's, 22 pounds. Some reports say it may have been even larger. Most horses carry a heart around 8 to 9 pounds. Secretariat's was nearly triple that. Dr. Swerchek had never seen anything like it. He called colleagues. They came to look. They measured. They photographed. And when word got out, it confirmed what people had suspected all along. This horse was built differently. Not just trained better. Not just lucky with his breeding or his rider or his timing. He was, quite literally, constructed for dominance in a way that nature rarely allows. You can't train a heart that size. You can't will it into existence. You either have it or you don't. And Secretariat had it. That's why when people talk about great horses now, they don't just talk about speed or stamina or pedigree. They talk about heart. And they wonder every single time if this new champion has what Secretariat had. Most of them don't. Number 14. The way he moved. Horses run, that's what they do. But most of them, even the great ones, run with effort. You can see the strain in their stride, the tension in their neck, the way their jockeys have to work to keep them balanced and focused. Secretariat didn't run like that. He floated. It's the word everyone used when they tried to describe it. Turf rider Charles Hatton said it looked like the horse never touched the ground. Ron Turcotte, his jockey, said it felt like sitting on a rocket that was constantly accelerating but somehow never straining. Watch the footage. Any race, doesn't matter which one. Notice how smooth he is, how rhythmic. His stride was massive. Some estimates put it at nearly 25 feet when fully extended, but it didn't look forced. It looked effortless, like he was simply covering more ground because that's what his body naturally wanted to do. Most horses have a moment in a race, usually in the stretch, where you can see them start to labor. Their stride shortens, their head drops, they're digging deep, trying to hold on. Secretariat's stride got longer as the race went on. That's not normal. That's not how equine physiology is supposed to work. But that's what made him the benchmark. Because when a horse comes along now and people say, he's got a beautiful stride, what they're really asking is, does he move like Secretariat? And the answer is almost always no. Number 13. The maiden race that changed everything. Most people remember Secretariat's Triple Crown, the Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont. But the real story, The moment when people who knew horses started to realize something impossible was happening came much earlier. Aqueduct, July 15, 1972. His second career start, a 6-furlong maiden race. He broke well, settled just off the pace, and when Paul Feliciano asked him to run in the stretch, the response was instantaneous. He opened up daylight. 3 lengths, 4, 5, and 6. He won by 6 lengths galloping. But it wasn't the margin that mattered. It was what happened after the race. The clockers, the men who time workouts and races, who've seen thousands of horses, who can tell you within a fraction of a second how fast a horse is running just by watching, they looked at their stopwatches and then looked at each other. The final time was 1:10 1/5 for 6 furlongs. That's fast, not just fast for a maiden, fast for any race, track record fast. And he'd done it in his second career start, against other maidens, without being pushed, without Ron Turcotte even asking him for everything he had. That's when the whispers started. The old-timers at Belmont Park who'd seen Man of War's descendants, who'd watched Citation and Native Dancer and Kelso, they started showing up to watch Secretariat's morning workouts. They didn't say much, they just watched. Because they knew. They'd seen enough horses to recognize when something truly different had arrived. And when people talk about young horses now, when they try to project how good a 2-year-old might become, they look for that same combination of natural speed and ease. They're looking for what Secretariat showed them that day at Aqueduct. Number 12. The comeback from defeat. Champions aren't defined by perfection, they're defined by how they respond when things go wrong. Secretariat lost 5 times in his career. That's not many, he won 16 of 21 starts, but those losses mattered. They shaped how we remember him. The most important one came in the Wood Memorial, his final prep race before the Kentucky Derby. April 21, 1973, 1 mile and 1/8 at Aqueduct. He was the heavy favorite, undefeated in his 3-year-old season. The Triple Crown was already being talked about as a foregone conclusion, and he finished 3rd. Not 2nd, 3rd, behind Anglelight and Sham. He never fired, never threatened, just ran a flat, lifeless race that had everyone, trainers, owners, the media, questioning whether he was ready, whether he was as good as everyone thought, whether the Triple Crown talk had been premature. Lucian Lauren, his trainer, didn't panic. He knew the horse. He suspected something was wrong. Later, they'd discover Secretariat had a mouth abscess that made it painful for him to take the bit. But there wasn't time to make excuses. The Derby was 2 weeks away. So they went to Churchill Downs. They worked him, they watched him. And when the gates opened for the 99th Kentucky Derby, with 134,000 people in the stands and millions watching on television, Secretariat didn't just run well, he ran the fastest Derby in history. That's the benchmark right there. Not the ability to win when everything goes right, the ability to lose, absorb the doubt, and come back stronger than anyone thought possible. Every time a champion suffers a surprising defeat now, every time the media starts questioning whether they're overrated, someone brings up the Wood Memorial. They bring up Secretariat, and they remind everyone that true greatness isn't about never losing, it's about what you do next. Number 11. The crowd at Belmont. There were 69,138 people at Belmont Park on June 9, 1973, the largest crowd in the track's history at that point. They didn't come to see a race. They came to see history. By the time the Belmont rolled around, everyone knew what was about to happen. Secretariat had won the Derby in record time. He'd won the Preakness in record time. The Triple Crown, which hadn't been won since Citation in 1948, 25 years earlier, was 1 race away. But this wasn't like other Triple Crown attempts.
There was no drama about whether he'd win. The question was how much. People talk about crowds at sporting events all the time, the noise, the energy, and the electricity. But the thing about the crowd at Belmont that day was the silence. When Secretariat opened up his lead in the far turn, when it became clear that what they were watching wasn't just a victory but a demolition, the noise didn't build. It faded. People stopped cheering, they stopped talking. They just watched. Because sometimes, when you're witnessing something truly extraordinary, noise feels disrespectful. Reaction feels inadequate. You can't cheer for something you can't fully comprehend. So they watched in silence as he pulled away. 5 lengths, 10, 15, then 20. And when Chick Anderson made the call, Secretariat is widening now. He is moving like a tremendous machine. His voice wasn't excited. It was reverent, awed. That's what makes Secretariat the benchmark. He's the standard not just for speed or dominance, but for the way greatness makes people feel, for the moments when competition stops being a contest and becomes a demonstration, when an entire crowd falls silent, not because they're disappointed, but because they're witnessing something they'll never see again. Every time a horse threatens a Triple Crown now, the media compares the atmosphere to Belmont 73. They look for that same sense of inevitability, that same collective awe, and they never quite find it.
Number 10. The numbers that won't go away. In most sports, records are meant to be broken. Someone runs a faster mile. Someone jumps higher. Technology improves, training methods evolve, and the standards keep climbing. In horse racing, Secretariat's records haven't just stood, they've barely been approached. The Kentucky Derby record, 1:59 2/5, set in 1973, still standing. The Belmont Stakes record, 2:24, set in 1973, still standing. 50-plus years. Thousands of Derby and Belmont runnings since then, countless champions, incredible horses like Seattle Slew, Affirmed, American Pharoah, Justify. None of them have come close. American Pharoah, when he won the Triple Crown in 2015, ran the Derby in 2:03 and change. Spectacular, historic. 4 seconds slower than Secretariat. 4 seconds in a 2-minute race is an eternity. It's not that horses haven't gotten faster. It's not that training methods or breeding programs haven't improved. It's that what Secretariat did was so far beyond the normal limits of the species that even half a century of progress hasn't been enough to catch him. That's why he's the benchmark. Because when someone runs a fast Derby, the first thing anyone says is, how does that compare to Secretariat? And the answer is always the same. It doesn't.
Number 9. The way he broke Sham. Sham deserves his own documentary. He was a brilliant racehorse. In any other year, he wins the Triple Crown easily, but this wasn't any other year. Sham and Secretariat met 3 times in the Triple Crown races. 3 times, Sham gave everything he had. 3 times, he was beaten. In the Derby, he ran the second fastest time in the race's history. He finished second, 2.5 lengths back. In the Preakness, he set a blistering pace, pushed Secretariat through fractions that should have broken both of them, and fought into the stretch. He finished second, 2.5 lengths back. In the Belmont, he matched Secretariat stride for stride through the fastest opening half-mile in Belmont Stakes history. He fractured a coffin bone trying to keep up. He still didn't quit until his body forced him to. He finished last. After the Belmont, Sham never won another race. He retired shortly after, his spirit and his body both broken by 3 attempts to do the impossible. His jockey, Laffit Pincay Jr., put it best, "I didn't lose those races. I rode the second best horse." That's the benchmark, not just winning, but what your dominance does to the competition. Sham wasn't a pretender, he was a champion-level horse who had the misfortune of running into something beyond championship. Now, when people talk about great rivalries in racing, when they discuss horses who pushed each other to greatness, someone always brings up Secretariat and Sham. But it wasn't a rivalry, it was a tragedy, a great horse destroyed by something greater. And that's why, when a dominant champion comes along now, people don't just ask if he can win. They ask, is he doing to his competition what Secretariat did to Sham? Can he break them just by being better? Number 8. The final quarter of the Derby. Everyone remembers that Secretariat won the Derby in under 2 minutes. Everyone remembers the record. But most people forget how he did it. He ran his final quarter mile in approximately 23 and change, his fastest quarter of the entire race. Think about that. 1.25 miles is a long race. By the time horses hit the final quarter mile, they're tired. They've been running flat out for more than a minute. Their stride shortens, their pace slows. They're trying to hang on, digging deep to get to the wire. Secretariat didn't slow down. He sped up. He ran his last quarter faster than his first, faster than his second, faster than his third. That's not supposed to be possible. Physiologically, horses don't work that way. You can't sustain a sprint for over a minute and then accelerate at the end. But Secretariat did, and that's why he became the standard. Because the benchmark isn't just running fast, it's running in a way that defies what everyone knows about the sport. Now, when analysts break down a horse's performance, they look at fractional times. They look at how the pace was distributed, and they ask, did he finish strong? What they're really asking is, did he do what Secretariat did? And almost universally, the answer is no. Number 7. The Preakness that might have been faster. The official time for the 1973 Preakness is 1:54 2/5, a track record, a Preakness record, a time that stood for decades. But there's always been a question about that number. The infield timer, a secondary timing system, clocked Secretariat at 1:53 2/5, a full second faster. For years, people debated it, argued about it. Some insisted the official time was correct. Others pointed to CBS's frame-by-frame analysis, which seemed to confirm the faster time. In 2012, after years of review, Maryland racing officials announced they were considering officially changing the time to 1:53 flat. They never did. The official record still stands at 1:54 2/5. But here's what matters. Nobody really knows how fast Secretariat ran that day. They know he ran faster than anyone else ever had. They know he broke Sham in the process. They know it was one of the most visually stunning performances in racing history. But the actual time? It's a mystery. And somehow that makes the performance even more legendary. Because the benchmark isn't just about numbers, it's about the performances that transcend measurement, the moments that are so extraordinary they break the systems designed to record them. Now, every time there's a controversial time in a major race, someone brings up the 73 Preakness. They talk about Secretariat. They wonder if what they just saw was faster than the official record shows, because if it happened once, it can happen again, and if you're being compared to the race that was so fast it couldn't be properly timed, you're being held to the highest standard there is. Number 6. The stride that science couldn't explain. After Secretariat retired, researchers studied him. Biomechanics experts, veterinarians, and equine scientists. They wanted to understand what made him so different. They measured everything: his conformation, his muscle composition, his skeletal structure, his gait. And they found something extraordinary. When Secretariat ran at full speed, His stride length was estimated at around 25 feet. Some analyses suggested it may have been even longer during the Belmont, closer to 26 or 27 feet. For context, the average thoroughbred stride at racing speed is around 20 to 22 feet. But stride length alone doesn't tell the story. Plenty of horses have long strides. What made Secretariat different was the frequency. Most horses with a longer stride compensate by taking fewer strides per second. It's a trade-off. You can have a long stride or a fast turnover, but not usually both. Secretariat had both. His stride was longer, and he was covering ground faster. He wasn't just taking bigger steps, he was taking them more quickly than his body should have been able to manage. The researchers couldn't fully explain it. The mechanics didn't quite add up. By every conventional measure, what he was doing shouldn't have been sustainable. But it was. And that's the benchmark. Not the horse that does what's expected efficiently, the horse that does what shouldn't be possible at all. Now, when biomechanics experts analyze a horse's stride, they're looking for that same impossible combination, that same defiance of conventional limits. They're looking for Secretariat, and they never find him.
Number 5. The performance that defined what pulling away means. In most races, when a horse wins by a large margin, you can pinpoint the moment when the race was decided, the moment when the leader opened up and the rest gave up chasing. The Belmont Stakes was different. Secretariat didn't just pull away, he kept pulling away for the entire final half mile. Watch the footage. Really watch it. At the half-mile pole, he's a few lengths clear, not insurmountable. Horses have closed bigger gaps. At the quarter pole, he's maybe 8 lengths ahead. Impressive, but still within the realm of a normal blowout. At the 8th pole, he's 15 lengths clear. Now it's extraordinary. At the wire, it's 31 lengths. He didn't just open up a big lead and hold it, he expanded it with every stride. The gap widened continuously, relentlessly, from the top of the stretch all the way to the finish line. That's not how races work. Once a horse has a comfortable lead, jockeys ease up. They save the horse. They don't keep pushing when the race is already won. Ron Turcotte wasn't pushing. He was sitting still, hands low, just steering, and Secretariat was still accelerating. That image, the horse pulling away from the field so dramatically that the camera couldn't fit him and the other horses in the same frame, became the defining visual of dominance in racing. Now, when a horse opens up a big lead, the call is always the same. He's pulling away. But what they mean is, he's doing what Secretariat did. And what they discover, almost always, is that no one pulls away like that. No one sustains that kind of acceleration. No one makes the competition look that hopeless. Secretariat did it once, and 50 years later, we're still using that performance as the standard for what dominant looks like. Number 4. The jockey who trusted him. Ron Turcotte doesn't get enough credit for what happened in 1973. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't quotable, he didn't have the personality of some of the other great jockeys of that era. But he understood something fundamental about Secretariat that a lot of jockeys might not have. He understood that the horse knew what he was doing. In the Derby, when Secretariat stumbled at the start and dropped back to 10th, Turcotte didn't panic. He didn't start snatching at the reins, fighting to get him back into position. He just waited. Let the horse find his rhythm. He trusted him. In the Preakness, when Sham set that blistering early pace, Turcotte didn't try to rate him, didn't try to hold him back. He let Secretariat run, let him match Sham stride for stride through fractions that should have been suicidal. And in the Belmont, this is the big one, when Secretariat opened up that impossible lead, Turcotte didn't ease him up, didn't stand up in the irons and coast to the wire. He let the horse run the race he wanted to run. That takes courage and trust.
Because if something had gone wrong, if Secretariat had injured himself, if he'd tied up, if he'd run himself into the ground, Turcotte would have been blamed. The critics would have said he pushed too hard, asked for too much. But Turcotte believed. He'd been on that horse's back for every one of those explosive workouts. He'd felt the power, the willingness, the joy that Secretariat seemed to take in running. So he trusted him. And because he did, we got to see what Secretariat was truly capable of. That's part of the benchmark, too. Not just the horse, but the partnership, the understanding between rider and animal that allows greatness to fully express itself. Now, when people talk about great jockeys, they don't just talk about skill or tactical acumen, they talk about trust, about knowing when to push and when to let the horse be the horse. They talk about what Turcotte did.
Number 3. The horse who loved to run. There's a difference between a horse that runs because it's trained to and a horse that runs because it wants to. Secretariat wanted to. Everyone who worked with him said it. Lucien Laurin and Ron Turcotte, the grooms, the exercise riders. When you took him out for a morning workout, he wasn't going through the motions. He was eager. He'd prance in the paddock, pull at the bit, practically beg to be turned loose. And when he ran, you could see it. The joy, the power, the absolute freedom of a creature doing exactly what it was built to do. After the Belmont, when Turcotte finally stood up in the irons and let him gallop out, Secretariat tossed his head and snorted. He wasn't tired, he wasn't hurting, he was pleased. He'd just run the greatest race in the history of the sport, shattered a record by multiple seconds, and he looked like he could go around again. That kind of spirit, that love of the competition itself, is rare. Most athletes, human or animal, reach a point where the grind wears them down. The training, the pressure, and the constant demand for performance. Not Secretariat. He never stopped loving it. And that became part of the benchmark, because speed can be bred, stamina can be trained, but heart, desire, the pure, joyful love of running, you can't create that. You can't teach it. You either have it or you don't. And when people evaluate great horses now, they look for it. They watch morning workouts. They study body language. They try to see if the horse is running because it has to or because it wants to. They're looking for what Secretariat had, and most of the time, they don't find it. Number 2. The legacy that changed breeding. Before Secretariat, breeding decisions in thoroughbred racing were careful, conservative things. You bred for consistency, for proven lines. You didn't take wild chances on unproven crosses. After Secretariat, everything changed. He was by Bold Ruler out of Something Royal, both excellent horses, but the cross itself wasn't obvious. Bold Ruler was known for speed, but his offspring tended to be sprinters. Something Royal had stamina and class, but she hadn't produced any major champions before Secretariat. The combination shouldn't have produced what it did, but it did. And after 1973, breeders started taking chances, started looking for combinations that might produce something special, even if the conventional wisdom said it wouldn't work. Bold Ruler went from a good sire to one of the most influential stallions in American racing history. His bloodline shows up everywhere now. Seattle Slew and AP Indy, countless stakes winners and champions. Secretariat himself became a significant sire, though he never quite replicated his own brilliance in his offspring. But his daughters, his female line, became invaluable. Broodmares carrying his bloodline commanded premium prices. And more than that, he changed how people thought about breeding. He proved that greatness could come from unexpected places, that sometimes the perfect combination isn't the obvious one. Now, when breeders discuss pedigrees and crosses, Secretariat is the example they cite.
the proof that calculated risk can produce transcendence. That's a benchmark that goes beyond the racetrack. It's a benchmark that shaped the entire future of the sport.
Number 1. The standard that can't be matched. Here's the thing about benchmarks. They're not about being the best, they're about being the measure, the point of comparison, the standard against which everything else is judged. For 50 years, every great horse that's come along has been compared to Secretariat. Seattle Slew, Affirmed, Spectacular Bid, Sunday Silence, Cigar, American Pharaoh, and Justify. All of them great, all of them champions, all of them measured against him. Is he as good as Secretariat? It's the question that never goes away, and it's not a fair question because the answer is always no. Not because those other horses weren't great, they were, but because Secretariat occupies a space in the sport that transcends normal measures of greatness. He's not just a champion who's remembered, he's the standard, the ideal, the impossible goal that every horse is chasing but can never quite reach. When American Pharaoh won the Triple Crown in 2015, breaking a 37-year drought, the headlines weren't just about him, they were about Secretariat, comparisons, times, and legacy. When Justify won in 2018, same thing. It's been half a century, an entire generation of horses has come and gone, and still the conversation always comes back to him. That's the benchmark. Not the records, though they matter. Not the Triple Crown, though that matters too. It's the permanence, the way one horse in one perfect season became the eternal standard for what greatness looks like. You can match Secretariat's accomplishments. American Pharaoh and Justify both won the Triple Crown, but you can't match the way he did it, the dominance, the visual poetry, the sense of witnessing something beyond category. And as long as horse racing exists, that's how it will be. Every champion will be compared to him. Every record time will be measured against his. Every dominant performance will be asked, was it as good as Secretariat? And the answer, respectfully, will almost always be no. Not because other horses aren't great, but because greatness, once truly achieved, becomes the permanent standard by which all other greatness is judged. Secretariat didn't just win, he became the benchmark, and 50 years later, no one has matched him. If you watched him run, if you were there, or if you've spent years studying the footage, I'd love to hear what stands out most to you. Was it the Belmont, the heart, the stride, or something else entirely? Leave your thoughts below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.